And check. And you got rice in the other one. That's for you guys to get after the first course. 6:30 anyway.
Everybody's on, see them on the street.
And then we do our art gallery.
Yeah, when you pick that up, didn't you know? Yeah, turn it up.
Well, you got one here. You got one here. And well, there was one on this guy. And then a microphone here. So you won't be in the way, don't worry. And then
Okay,
if you
so
get on
say if I walk by
stage,
this way,
I think the job is to get your best shots.
Right, okay.
And we'll work around you.
Yeah, I'll stay out of the way.
If you're standing like right in front of the camera like this,
Yeah.
we'll move.
Yeah. There's no way I'll be
This
in
is
the way.
Steve. And our photographer. I would like to.
Hey, Chef, do we offer them wine while they're waiting? While they're here? No.
I have enough for one glass with each course.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Well, you can break into your personal stash, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've been doing them through the pandemic. Every month.
You mean with your classes? Oh, no, she.
We've got one on Sunday. This is the first one for the and I'm just real happy to see you. Thanks for being a sponsor. Right here. I know, and this is very modern. Well, delicious, it's fun. So, yeah, oh yeah. I used to drink tons of it, so I used to think bullshit. Finally figured it out. And it's the way I wanted it to run, and I did. I wanted to shut this off and the stairs were gonna go. It turned into a few things, and then I kept coming back to the way. And so, yeah, this is my first house. So I was in a small space. And really? Oh, yeah.
You went from Alabama to New York?
Yeah.
City lady.
So I left in the Berkeley for 19 days. So once I came back here, this felt like Tuscaloosa from 1960 and 1970. It's like, oh, I never, it's like a dream. Yeah, and I'm back now about 30, 40 years, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of Sort of I don't know, it's sort of, because I think I work in there. Just the resistance from the Russian. And I can understand that, we grew up here, this is also China, in summertime.
Ooh, big kitchen. Huh? Oh, is it? What? Not yet. No. Here's how you do it.
Good to see you. Good. Hi, you come back? Oh, for dinner?
Yeah, she bought sponsorship, so that's great. How are you then?
Good. I heard you're not at your position.
Oh, I retired because.
Of Steve? Makes it in a 75 quarter on Zoom. Not quite when you start.
After I do.
No, right here. Yeah, I can let you on Sunday. Yeah. My sister was in town.
So I'll need.
So they got a new.
Yeah, I'll cut the
Oh, they can't.
I'm gonna come over here.
And I'm listening to them. They're probably hearing me now, figuring out what to say.
Y'all keep an eye on my white one.
All right, everybody who's Zooming, this is Marilyn.
To run out,
Unmute your cameras.
or something else, whatever.
Hang on. Hello.
I in between the salmon sauce and
Hi.
zucchini.
I sent it to you.
So make sure you have more.
Do you have the link I sent in the email? That is the correct code. I also sent an email, a link that you can just click on, that you can attach to on that end.
This is our place.
Feel free to broadcast that code to all your.
Or I can send it to Carolyn on her.
I like it.
Please do. Here, and I'll.
Picture that, whatever.
Well, that's what he has it. It's not coming through. He says it's invalid number. Hey, Jerry, you said you're doing 371-443-0228, correct?
You aren't gonna need it until after
And
the
the
show.
ID number does
So,
not work.
you know, and we'll be doing, it's gonna take me 15 minutes.
How would that be, Steve?
Recording in progress.
Can you count when you get on?
I'm having some.
Yeah, this got stuck in the seat too, that's.
Hang on, we're working on it. If I sent you the link on Carolyn's phone, will that work? Okay, because that you don't even have to enter, you should not have to enter a password. Okay. Fantastic, and then show us your face, hit the video camera when you get on board, okay?
Yeah, those two little ones coming.
Yeah. Yes, she did.
Just half.
Yeah, thank you,
Just
Karen.
dice them, not like
All right,
that.
that it? Yay. All right, we're on.
We're all set, guys.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah,
So
those
you're
two little
on,
ones.
and make sure everybody who's in Zoom land, make sure you hit the video start, the video, what do you call that? Start video. Because we want to see your face. We're going to have a bunch of, we want to see everybody as you're cooking, watching Chef cook.
Marilyn, you need to send me a link.
James is always worried about that. They're usually.
Here's an extra one here. Well, I'm clear on-
It's an induction burner. You put an aluminum wire in there.
I don't know why I can't get the volume through the TV.
I'm sorry, what's wrong?
Oh, well, I'm gonna look around the whole house. Somebody's talking, Jerry, that's why.
No, it's not coming through the speaker there at all. It's coming through my computer.
We can hear you.
Hey, Jane, how do I pull up the fan?
Right here.
Okay, the last segment.
HDMI cable, Gary.
Yeah, I have that. It's all connected. It's just the volume's not coming through on that. And I don't understand why.
Cool, because that iron skillet's gonna be there, and I'll put the fish in. And then here, something.
About this time of year, I think it was in July. It was during the Black Essence Festival, and we didn't know
Yeah,
it matters, but it's just a lot of the restaurants weren't open because of that.
Oh, it's an event too. Hey.
Go find your seat, it's all seating.
You still there?
That's a chef's dream to see something like that.
yeah.
Did you find, I copied you on the email that had the link, Jane?
I don't know.
It's just this whole Google is.
Okay. On this last segment, and I'll get done with the salmon.
And the link would have come last night to everybody or today as well, and I was looking as we speak. For the link, it's just, I wanted it to be simple, but the way Google is.
Yeah, and that'll be in the third segment. In the third segment, we're gonna do the salmon, then we're gonna move immediately over to the break. And put those green onions along with the zucchini. Give me about 6 of those. About 6 of those, then chop those too. Yeah, as soon as I'm first segment, over there, James can. And that's when the first wine will get served. Yeah, be quiet, like little mouse. This way, yeah, we'll have to do this pretty quickly. James, when you're plating this shrimp Creole over here, you'll need to start before the first segment's over. You'll see me over here cooking, and I'll turn around and throw something at you or something. I'll let you know, you need to start. Start when the plate is up.
43
Be quiet.
0228.
You can be over here helping them as long as y'all are off screen. And then the minute we break between segments.
0228.
Where's Mirepoix? That way we don't pay for it.
You said Marilyn's gonna be on camera.
I'm not sure.
Because we don't want to.
I think she's on that camera. And if she is, you can go this way because we're gonna be over here resetting. Okay, so you can go that way. He'll have those plated up and pretty much ready.
I think we should probably go this way anyway.
Yeah. And let's get the other.
Bottles of wine, we just grab and take these.
Yep. These will be over here as soon as you take one tray.
But we have another tray jacket.
Put the other tray up, fill it up. It's only 20 people. You know, you can get 10 of these, fill the tray up. I think all that can happen in about 4 to 5 minutes tops.
So the other tray jack's right there, so we'll set it up with one of
Meeting is being recorded, so continue.
Why not?
Are they on video yet?
I've used it. My granddaughter's on there. She used it just a few minutes ago.
You see us? You see me? I'm talking to you.
No, I just do
Yeah, Madeline's on. She's looking at, moving around doing stuff now. Yeah, the feed's already on.
Let's see.
Yes, they are. Capital A, R-D-O-N-N-E. Yeah, I know, it's going out everywhere. Yeah, since we're already on. Yeah. Yeah, really. This is what we really do. So if we went for that, yep. Production line.
Do you have a look at this?
Watch when I go to put that salmon in that iron skillet. Yeah, then rise up out of there. A fan will rise up out of there and suck out all the smoke. Watch.
Have you cooked here before? Get out of here.
Because when I put that salmon in there, it's going to start smoking. Then I put it back down.
I want one of those that can put on my bed, but I want it to be on trees. Never seen anything like that in my life.
It's going to be so cool.
Mom, how do you watch that? How?
She sent it to me the link.
I can watch it all the time?
Yeah, but you need to let it charge. So can you put it right here? It's gonna die. Put it up right there.
You
Watch
can
it.
watch it. I'm running around.
Huh?
Tell me what.
You wanna watch it?
Yeah, really. All right, everybody turn your mic off, turn your phones down.
Exactly the reason why we started it. Hey, Greg. Greg. Perfect timing to get started at 6:30. Get ready here at 6. Zoom in. Get it, girls.
I'm talking about the window. How come it looks so dark on that screen? Is it just that screen or what?
Yeah, clear
That would be.
Yeah. Lighting on that screen right there is awful dark.
Lights behind you.
Oh,
In
okay.
fact, if we could turn those two lights
I
off.
see me on over there. Well, there's a delay on this, isn't there? There's a delay on this.
Yeah, it's going to San Jose and
You
back.
want those on, Steve? You want those on?
Can we turn this? Yeah, there we go. Thanks.
You want them on?
Yeah. Yeah, can you turn those up? Huh?
The mayor. So turn their lights back on. So they're gonna be. They're gonna be conversation. The other ones are the ceiling lights. So I said, turn them on.
There was gonna, he asked if there was more light on his face.
I turned off that.
Are there 2 types?
Oh, okay, Steve, maybe point them out.
I turned those off accidentally. Do you need those on?
These are great. These are on. Great.
Our eyes. Yeah, leave them on.
Just put more light over there toward Greg, and less light coming from it.
Is that good? Is that good right now?
That's a lot better.
Yes, that's a lot better.
All right.
I know, I did, people in here say, why am I dancing? Somebody comes in and they say, somebody. I did, you know what I did? Turn this off.
Yeah, you got your spot.
Yeah, I'm off screen right here. Like just barely, but.
Well, he's gonna zoom in. It'll be a lot closer. It'll be just this, you know, thing here. Yeah. So you can see my smiling face. How about over here? You got me right where you want me? Yeah, there you go. Can you get a tight shot on my board? Yeah, this needs to be relatively tight over here. That'll do the job. I'm sorry, what?
Let's make that the preset for the prep area.
Yeah, for the prep area. But you'll also, in between courses, isn't Marilyn supposed to be doing a couple of minutes? You got another camera for her or what?
I do.
Okay, so don't be there. Yeah, that's where Maryland will be between courses, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll serve this way. And where's that camera at, Steve? Is that from that camera? Because my people are gonna be walking by with trays of food.
That's why I was worried.
What are you saying?
They're going, while she's talking in between courses, my people are gonna be walking by with these trays of food to serve to the people over here. It's only gonna happen between segment 1 and 2. Duck.
You'd be okay. It's Zoom like
Yeah, duck, man.
it's reality TV.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, is it the campus? Or is it the one up there?
Yeah.
It's up there though. Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, you'll have a head go by with a tray of food. That'll look cool. She'll be there from here up. And a little head will go by right about here. Yeah.
Hi, Mike. How are you? I did.
How y'all doing?
Yeah.
Borrow the fridge.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I have no idea what it is.
You gonna mute this one? Or mute that one? Oh, my name just came on the screen.
Jackie Lowe's, or what's that? What's your name on the screen?
Did we screw it up?
For those in the Zoom land, we're muting everybody, I think. Is that right? That's what we're doing. We're muting everybody. Okay. Yes. You ready? Yes. Everybody on? I think everybody. Everybody gets a chance to sit down. And we're over there on this. Yeah.
Probably pop seconds.
3 minutes. All right, they'll be it.
So y'all are welcome to get up and move around while we're cooking. Somebody get a better view. Give you a good view.
But be quiet about it. All right, to start, I'm assuming you're gonna do the intro, hi, and then all this.
Yeah, and I'll introduce you.
And this here, super chef. I mean,
I got everything. Hey,
you wanna do it, are we gonna do it here, there, what? It's not as much fun.
Well, you can stand right there. I'm just gonna be where Jane is.
Well, in between segments, but I mean, for the
The
introduction.
intro, you tell me where you want me to be and he'll make it work. Right there?
I'll stand over.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna be all right, because it's my thing. Yeah.
I have speech. Is it big enough?
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Action.
Quiet on the
Where's
set.
Katie? Where's Katie? Oh, thank you everyone for coming to Bleubird, and while we're cooking, you're welcome to get up and stretch and walk around, and if you want to get a better view from where you're sitting. We kind of added some chairs around, if you want to get up and sit in another chair or something. So I hope all of you had a chance to take a look around at what we're doing here at Bleubird. A lot of people don't know what the Blue House is all about, so it's very entrepreneurial. We do run Airbnb, Verbo, art galleries, events, bridal showers. I'm getting into weddings now, boutique weddings. So after turned down about 5 weddings this year. I'm like, maybe I better figure out contracts and make it work. So, and the cooking shows, this is our first one as a benefit. So hats off to all of you for helping contribute to one of my favorite passions is Ward Hall, and how much Georgetown needs something that wonderful, this old beautiful building, where you can have venues with outdoor weddings and events. So we're kind of missing that. So it needs our help. Thank you for being a part of that. Okay. Also, big hats off to Marilyn Stevens for really, there's a lot of work that goes behind putting one of these together. It's a lot of steps to make it happen, and Marilyn was the team leader for it. So I'm gonna let Marilyn introduce our chef and welcome our crew.
Thank you, Jane, so much for introducing us to your beautiful home and allowing us to be here in this gorgeous kitchen. And we get to experience a really interesting dinner tonight, and I'm sure the chef is really, I think, prepared well for us. So I want to first of all thank the sponsors and everybody who is in person. We're extremely generous with sponsors, with sponsoring the event. So you guys get to have the in-person event, which is great. So we get to teach, you get to learn but you don't have to cook. Everybody else who's in Zoom land gets to cook along with chef, and I think that's awesome. So we will have the recording so that you can do it at home, and we'll have all the details for you for that as well. So I also want to thank everybody who is Zooming along. Thank you so much, because without this, you guys, it's just a really pleasure to have everybody in, and you can understand why we said to start Zooming at 6 and the show was starting at 6:30, because we had to get everybody connected. So thanks so much for being patient. And do me a favor, everybody in Zoom land, please let me know how you heard about this event, because I just want to see where our advertisement, how you heard about it, basically. So just let us know how that happened. I appreciate that as well. And what happens with all the money that we raise, Jane talked about going to Ward Hall, but this is put on by the Scott County Women's Club, and the Scott County Women's Club helps to support community charities and nonprofits, and many of those would suffer without our support. As a matter of fact, the Scott County Women's Club have donated over $485,000 to charities and $38,000 for high school scholarships. As a matter of fact, we actually have our photographer from the local paper is one of our scholarship recipients. So Abby Hooven is one of those. So it was really a pleasure for us to see our money's going to some really good things there. So thank you, Abby, for letting it, for coming and taking pictures tonight. Jane mentioned some things a little bit about Ward Hall. And it is a beautiful, beautiful place. So let's, make sure that we always support that. If you're local, go visit. If you're not local and you come to Georgetown, please go visit. It is one of Kentucky's finest antebellum architectures in the country, actually. And it was built around 1857. Guess for how much? $50,000 in gold. It's huge. It's a beautiful place, but it's about 1857. So Junius Richard Ward built it for his wife, Matilda Viley Ward, and we're going to have a test later on, so make sure you know that. Just kidding. So it also happened to be the inspiration for the Mancha Terra and Gone with the Wind, which I thought was interesting as well. I would like to verbally thank the sponsors. We have Central Bank, Fleet Services, Johnson Funeral Home, Hawkins Smith Agency, the Prather team with Keller Williams, Zoom, Becky and Marion Cox, Linda Riley and Allison Bajork, Mary Pat and Russ Whitney, Linda and Butch Glass, Bleubird Studio, and Broussard's Delta Kitchen. So thank you all for your sponsorship of this. So just a little bit about what you're going to get to experience tonight. Broussard's Delta Kitchen serves amazing Creole dishes that are unmatched anywhere in Kentucky and in the Southeast. Chef and owner Greg Scott learned to cook as a child under the loving care of his grandma Broussard. Today, after years of cooking in various parts of the United States, he returned to Kentucky and uses the same level of care that he learned from his grandma in preparing every single meal. So you'll feel right at home at Broussard's for a casual and yet classy and memorable experience and dining experience. So Chef Greg, welcome and thank you for making our Cooking with Celebrity Chefs of Georgetown debut an amazing success. So you've been a pleasure to work with. I walked into his place.
We're not done yet.
I walked into his place and I said, hey, I'm with the Scott County Women's Club. I have a fundraiser I want to talk to you about. He says, I'm in. And I was like, you don't even know what it is yet. Yeah, I'm in. I don't care.
Who cares?
So he's in, and he's such a great part of the community. So Chef, take it away.
All right. Let's walk over here to begin with, the prep lab. Come on, camera guy, keep up. I got shorter. What happened there? All right. As Marilyn said, my name's Greg Scott. I own Broussard's Kitchen, Delta Kitchen, up the street a ways. We're a Creole Americana type of restaurant. A lot of the stuff we do is based in the Caribbean too. And not everything is New Orleans based. And we do some stuff from Memphis and Mississippi and things like that. Tonight, we're going to do 3 traditional Creole dishes. We're going to start with a shrimp Creole. Now the Creole sauce, it's the flagship. It's a tomato-based ragu. And that's not spelled R-A-G-U, okay? It's a ragu. And it's essentially a stew. So we're going to start off, and by the way, those of you who haven't started your roux yet, better get it going, okay? Quarter pound of butter, about a half cup of flour, get it on a medium-low skillet in an iron skillet, okay? Stir it frequently. The first 3 ingredients here are called the Trinity. This is a Mirepoix. When the French aristocrats originally came to New Orleans, in French foods, you have your Mirepoix is celery, onions, and carrots. Well, carrots don't grow in the bayou, but bell peppers do. Okay, so that became our Mirepoix. We're going to start, I use red bell peppers instead of green. The reason I do that is it's a much milder flavor. And with a green pepper, when you put a green pepper in something, it takes over the flavor. It's all you can taste. So we use a nice red. Now we need these about a 1/2 inch dice, okay? Let's chop these up. Are y'all chopping? All right. I didn't need that one. With onions, the quickest way to cut these things, of course, this is 2 halves. Okay, turn it up on its side like this. Give it a cut and simply turn it and chop. We're rough chopping this. This is a stew. Okay, so we're not really concerned about what they look like. Just as long as they're reasonably uniform. When it comes to cutting these bell peppers, now you see a lot of people will cut the top off And then they peel all the crap out of it, and then they go and they cut it. Save yourself a lot of time. Simply go around it like this, leaving the membrane intact. Okay? And then cut the bottom off. Now you have a flat surface to cut. Okay, and we're going to do the same 1/2 inch rough chop with these. This is much simpler than tearing it apart, isn't it? And you don't have to pick out all the seeds and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot faster. Now, this particular stew that we're making here, Creole sauce is really a base for a lot of other different Creole dishes. You may have heard of like alligator sauce piquant. I know you've heard of jambalaya. Well, with this, to make jambalaya is the exact same procedure and pretty much the same ingredients. Simply delete the brown sugar and add some chopped up andouille sausage, and you have jambalaya. It's that fast. And alligator sauce piquant, you simply cook it down a while, add a little brown roux. We'll be making a brown roux. Well, you're already making a brown roux. Tomato puree. Okay? Accurate measurements are the key. Okay? All right. That's a simple start. One thing I forgot to tell you. There's a lot of different tools we use in the kitchen. We use this to sharpen our knives. We use our knife a lot. Big spoons, I got tongs, I got all kinds of stuff. The most important tool in your kitchen is one of these. Okay? You have to have a glass of wine or you can't cook French food. It's just that simple. Okay, so everybody open your glass. There we go. All right, now we're going to come over here. The rest of the ingredients that go in this. And we're going to put everything in the pot at the same time. Everything but the shrimps. Some garlic. Just a little bit. Some spice mix. Now that spice mix recipe that I gave you all is very versatile. You can use that. You can put a little bit on your scrambled eggs in the morning. And it will taste entirely different than if you put a lot on a piece of chicken at dinner. But it's the same spice mix, so you don't have to make a whole bunch of stuff. All right, I got my garlic in there. I got my brown sugar in there. I have some chicken base here. Now, you'll find that on your recipe. You can substitute some bouillon cubes. Take and mash them. I don't know, hit them with a hammer or something. All right. And the Worcestershire sauce. Accurate measurements are the key. All right. That's it. That's Creole sauce. That's all there is to it. What we're going to do now is bring this to a boil quickly. Okay, as quickly as we can. We don't want this to really cook all that much because in our next step with the shrimp, we're going to cook it quite a bit. And the reason we're heating it up right now to begin with is simply to get your chicken base and your brown sugar to melt. Once that happens, we're ready to move on to the next step. Everybody got their roux cooking? Huh? Make sure you stir it frequently. When I was a little kid at my granny's house, if you were a bad boy, you had to stir the roux. Now that roux would sit there and Granny would make it like 2 pounds of butter and a big mess of flour. And it would last for, most of the week. But it would have to be on the stove all day long. Now, she would put it on in the morning right after breakfast, and it'd be almost ready at dinner time. But it had to be stirred all day long. So if you were a bad boy at Granny's house, you had to stir the roux. Guess what I do for a living? You know, I was a good kid. I mean, I swear I was. All right. This obviously will cook a lot longer, but let's move on to making the dish. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to saute our shrimps in some butter and garlic and some of your spice mix. We're going to get these till they're about halfway done. Then we're going to add some of the sauce. We're going to let it simmer a little bit more. Then we're going to add some butter. Now that step is called mounting with butter, mounting. And it essentially emulsifies the sauce. And we'll try to get in close when we do this, and you'll see it change from a bright red sauce to a very nice and creamy, smooth kind of thing. Yeah. So what should we talk about while we're waiting for the pan to get hot?
I mean, it looks like there's people cooking it from zone out in Zoom land.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like Cindy.
Everybody out there cooking?
Cindy Moeller.
Or are y'all just sitting there watching?
Somebody with a, oh, they both have their cooking.
Hey, Cindy.
Go.
Sherry's cooking too.
She's in the kitchen, I think.
During this little break here, you can open another bottle of wine if you need one. All right, our pan's hot. So we're gonna add the butter. Always keep a bunch of room temperature butter laying around. You never know when you're gonna need it. I have here about a dozen shrimp, a little bit, about 3/4 of a pound. This is enough. This should be enough to feed 2 people. All right, now we're gonna add some garlic. And that's, I don't know, teaspoon or so. Some spice mix. And that garlic is just starting to soften a little bit. We don't want to let it brown because it'll burn by the time this dish is done. Add our shrimps. A lot of people try this move at home. And they wind up with food everywhere. Okay? Because most of them are trying to do this kind of move with your wrist. It's not a wrist movement. It's an elbow movement. See what I'm doing? My wrist is straight. It's an elbow movement. And you can throw a little hip in it, you know, to get it going really well. All right, our shrimp are probably cooked about halfway now. Give them another second. Now you notice doing it this way, our garlic's not burning. It's now because, you know, the pan cooled off when we added the shrimp. But if you cook that garlic too long at first, by now it should be burnt.
Smells awesome.
I'm sorry?
Smells awesome.
No. But ambidextrous. All right, let's make sure they're all cooking pretty even here. All right, shrimp are probably almost all the way done. At this point, Creole sauce. Normally, when you're cooking this, Creole sauce would be a little further along. When you're heating it, bring it to a boil, let it boil pretty fast for about 2 minutes, and then shut it off and just set it aside. By the time it cools down a bit, you know, the vegetables won't be too soft. If you cook it too long before we get to this step, you have a soup, and it won't be as good. All right, we're just about there. Don't overcook your shrimp. You might as well chew on a big handful of rubber bands if you do. And it won't be fun. Now I'm cooking this a little extra here, a little bit longer than I normally would, simply because the Creole sauce wasn't quite done yet. I want all those vegetables to get soft. And they pretty much are by now. Okay, all the gray is gone out of the shrimp, so we know they're done. All right, at this point, we'll simply turn the fire off. And come back with room temperature butter. This, as I told you, this is called mounting with butter. And essentially, if you can get in close on this, Steve, you can see how it's starting to change color. And it's starting to become real creamy as opposed to a tomatoey type sauce. Almost looks like it's got cream. We will come back to this technique on the third dish, the Salmon St. Pierre. But and there we go. That's shrimp Creole. It's just that simple. And you can do this for a family of 4. You get a great big old skillet to cook all this in. But the pot, you know, what have we been at this? Maybe 10 minutes? Okay, and that's all there is to it. Some rice. Ow. Careful, that's out. I usually garnish this with a little bit of green onions. That's shrimp Creole. I'll be back in a minute. Miss Marilyn's got a few things to tell you. Start plating up.
Should I go over here? Is this good, Steve?
This is good.
All right, good. So I am like the Vanna or the guy in between, you know, the commercial breaks. It's like, you know, reach in your jeans and pull out those greens and, you know, and make some donations and stuff. So what I want to make sure that you guys understand is all the good that we do for us as the Scott County Women's Club. And those that are in Zoom land, many of you guys are part of the Scott County Women's Club as well. But we do a lot of great things for the community. And this past year, as everybody understands, the pandemic really was a kicker with many situations, with many of the needy organizations and people that we help to support. But we kept moving along, we kept meeting via Zoom, and with our Zoom guy, I was gonna say he just joined the Scott County Women's Club. He's just an alias or a member. But anyway, it was one of those things that's been really a good thing for the community. So make sure that when you see things for that the Scott County Women's Club is doing, make sure that you hop on board and support. We've got Linda Riley here, who has really has been one of the inspirations for our beautification of Georgetown and with the bulb planting and such. And so we've done a whole lot of things with that to make Georgetown look really beautiful as well. It's always a great thing. But again, tonight is for Ward Hall. And so if you guys are at home and you're cooking with other people, and, you know, just pass the hat if you want, and then make that donation to the Scott County Women's Club, so that we can, you know, just increase our donations there to Ward Hall. And then, if you guys have any questions, if you want to unmute and maybe pop some questions out, that would be also something that you can do as well. Or if anybody here in house if they have any questions that maybe I can answer, I can cook, but I can't cook. He can answer the cooking questions.
Chef, do you have any Kentucky connections before you came up here?
I went to high school at Sarah High School in 1970, somewhere back there. And I was originally born in Annapolis, Maryland. And when my parents split up when I was 14, and I moved here with my mother. My mother's from Harlan County. And my father is from right outside New Orleans in Chalmette. So I came here, and then I'd spend the summers at my granny's house. And then as soon as I got out of high school, I was gone, boy. Next thing I knew, I was in the French Quarter, and I was having a great time. I stayed at Granny's for about a year or so. And then, you know, I went to work at Galatoire's restaurant in the French Quarter, which is like, you know, the top of the heap, man. And it's an incredible place. And I thought, well, I kind of like this. You know, I was just trying to make some money to buy a car. And so Granny gave me the money to go to culinary school. And I went to culinary school in New York. And about 2 years later, I was doing my apprenticeship at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. And the chef, one of the chefs there, was real good friends with the executive chef at the Boca Raton Hotel and Club down in Florida. And they needed a banquet chef. And he recommended me, which was the greatest thing ever happened to me. I swear. And I went down there and I became the banquet chef. And about 3 years into it, the Boca Hotel and Club was purchased by Ritz-Carlton. They were on a major expansion back in the mid 80s. And that's when I started with them. And I worked with them for about 22 years before I retired. And I guess I've been here for 12 or 13 years now. My daughter wanted to go to college and she wanted to go to UK. And I still had, you know, there's some property here so we could qualify for, you know, in-state tuition because I couldn't afford William and Mary where she wanted to go. Our second choice was UK. So we wound up back here, you know, and I've been here ever since. I sat on the couch for about 6 years and that was enough. So I decided, well, I need to do something. So I opened a little place in Wilmore. I had a little soda fountain kind of place, and it was very authentic. It had the spinny stools and everything, you know, and I put in a pizza oven, and I thought, well, I'm going to spend the rest of my days here selling ice cream to children. It was great. I thought it was really cool. But I was a victim of my own success. We got busy, so it became work, which was totally not the plan. Hey, can you clean that up for me, please? Dump it in the pan or something. So I decided if I was going to continue to work, I might as well get paid. So I came to Georgetown, and it took a long time to find Georgetown. You know, I studied the demographics of all the smaller cities. I didn't want to be in Lexington. It's overbuilt. There's too many seats. That's why they close left and right down there. And I decided to come to Georgetown simply because, well, it's a cool old Victorian town, you know, and I love those things. I am a perpetual traveler. I am a terminal tourist, that's for sure. And I like the way it looked. Everybody here has money. Nobody's poor here. You know, I mean, there's one homeless guy, you know, and I could open up, and the thing is you had two very nice fine dining restaurants that were priced about here, and everything else was priced down here. So there was no competition in the middle. So that's why I came here. Now, I was just going to open a little upscale Italian joint on the other end of the block from where I am. But it was gonna need a whole lot of renovation before I could move in. And my landlord, Mr. Smith, says, well, come down and look at this one down on this end of the block. And he gave it to me for the same price. And I was like, well, where do I sign? You know, and the next thing I know, okay, well, we got to do something bigger. So that's how we got Broussard. And it's turned out pretty good. I mean, we've been open just over 2 years. Did your assistant bail on you?
Yeah, I think there's how much to help everybody.
All right. Let's get back to it. Yeah, everybody got their tool? Okay. This dish is crawfish etouffee. Now, in Western Louisiana, this is a ragout. It is a stew that cooks all day. The Cajuns were occasions in French. They were fleeing religious persecution in France. They were in the Alsace Mountains, and they came to Nova Scotia. But then they were run out of town by the Huguenots. And they came down the Mississippi River, down the St. Lawrence Waterway, all the way down the Mississippi River to Louisiana. Now, these people were hunters, gatherers, I guess, you know, trappers, and they lived off of the land. They weren't really farmers. And a lot of their foods, like Creole sauce and things like that, were originated out there, where you'd put it in the pot over a little fire in the morning, go hunting, and come back, and then you'd have your protein to put in. And that's kind of how it worked. But in New Orleans, the French aristocrats settled New Orleans, and people from Paris. And their cooks were slaves from the Caribbean. Okay, and a lot of the techniques that are in New Orleans are very different than the foods that are cooked out in West Louisiana by the Cajuns. They have the same ingredients because it was the New World. That's all that grew. But they had very different techniques. So you can find something the way we make this shrimp Creole in West Louisiana. It looks like a bowl of V8 with some shrimp swimming around in it because it's been cooked all day. In the style in New Orleans, we want to keep the vegetables to have some structure and some taste, and then different layers of flavor. This dish is the same way. Now, I have a friend who owns a restaurant down by the river, and Tommy's from West Louisiana. He's an old Cajun boy. And when Tommy makes etouffee, he makes it in a big giant pot with about 20 pounds of crawfish in it, and it simmers for a couple of hours, and it's excellent. But when I make it, I learned this recipe when I worked for Paul Prudhomme in New Orleans, back in another lifetime, back in the 80s. And he makes it very different than anybody else. So that's what we're going to do here. I haven't changed that recipe, never saw any reason to over all these years. And it still sells very well. It's our #1 seller at Broussard's is the crawfish etouffee. And each dish that you come to the restaurant to get, when you order it, the waiters put in that order, the cook starts doing this. Nothing is pre-made other than the roux. Okay, those of you who are cooking your roux right now, you about to get left behind, child. I'm sorry. When you're making that roux, you want to keep it at a very low temperature and stir it frequently until it's about done. You're making such a small amount, it'll probably brown pretty quickly. You want it to get to a dark peanut butter kind of color, okay? And at that point, you want to turn that temperature up and get that bad boy bubbling. It needs to get hot. And then you'll pull it off the fire. Now, if you look at your recipe, it says a little bit of bell pepper, some onion, and some celery. You need to whirl them in your food processor until they turn to soup. Okay, you pull that bad boy off of the heat. Open the window, because that's going to be important. Pull it off of the heat and add that stuff in. And you need to dump it in all at once. And it's gonna steam, and it's gonna wanna jump out of the pot. But you need to be stirring it the whole time. It'll calm down to stop the steam after a few minutes. You slide it back on the fire on a very low fire and let it go about another 10, 12 minutes. Bam, you're done. All right, now we're gonna start with the same way we start just about every recipe. With butter. Gotta have butter, chef. Lots of it. Don't want it to burn. With butter, garlic, and spice mix. Here again, we're sauteing this garlic till it just gets fragrant and a little bit soft. Don't overcook it. Now we're gonna add, I got about a pound of crawfish here. You'll see them in your store in a bag similar to this. This is a pound. They have it at Kroger, they have them occasionally. Every once in a while, they got them in the freezer section at Walmart even. So here I have a pound of crawfish. Now this will feed 2 people that look like me. Or it will feed 3, maybe even 4 people that are little petite things. Okay, we're tossing that, and I'm throwing in a handful of green onions. The green part that's chopped. Just to add a little flavor. Trump stock. It's right on the ball. Thank you, Mona. All right. Now, these things are fully cooked when you take them out the bag. So all we're really doing is getting them hot and infusing them with the spice mix and some of the garlic. All right. I need to have to wait. But it's got to take a bit. But of course, this leaves you enough time to open another bottle of wine if you have to. You're cut off. You're cut off. All right, I've pretty much heated them through. Our garlic is done cooking. The crawfish are now starting to cook. Now we need to start moving a little quickly. Now I've got some roux that I already made up here. I make this stuff in like 5 pounds at a time. We'll crumble it a little bit in. You want to start probably with this much crawfish. You don't want to start with about a tablespoon or 2. I put it in at this point because it's easier to make it melt. I could have put the shrimp stock in and then put the roux in, but it would have taken forever, and you have to move quickly here. Your crawfish overcook and they are terrible. They lose all their flavor. All right, you see where that's thickened up a little bit, where that roux started to melt. Now we're adding shrimp stock. Now, I think I gave you a recipe for the shrimp stock. Basically, you peeled a whole bunch of shrimps for all of these dishes. We take those shrimp shells, we put them, cover them with some water, bring it to a boil, turn the temperature down, and let it simmer for 15 minutes. That's it. That's shrimp stock. Now you can make like a vegetable stock with all your leftover vegetable scraps. Let it cook for a little bit, then add your shrimp shells, and you get a more heartier stock. Look at that. I put in the right amount of roux. Imagine that. After you do this a gazillion times, you'll do it too. I promise. Now, spoke too soon. Now, at this point, I can tell by looking at it, it's a little bit too wet. Can you give me some rice? Fill that up so I can mold it. So I crumble in a little bit of roux. don't get too carried away with this roux. If you do, you're gonna wind up with glue. One important thing about using a roux of any kind, or any thickening agent for that matter, if you don't have a boil going, it's not going to activate. It's simply not. And I don't care if you're using a flour slurry, a roux, cornstarch for that matter. If it's not boiling, it's not going to activate this holding power. A lot of people make that mistake and it's not boiling and they add some roux and they're like, hey, nothing's working here, let's add some more. Then they bring it up to temperature and next thing you know, it all comes out in one solid piece. All right, that's it. But what's the final step? Mount it with butter. Now, Steve, can you get in close in on that? Can y'all see what this looks like? As it's starting, it's relatively thick. It's the thickness of a sauce. But when I add this butter, again, it's going to change. Now, you notice I'm doing that off of the heat. Now, when I've mounted it with this butter, now, I don't know if you can see it, but see how smooth and creamy that got? And it added a whole bunch of sweetness. And I use a salted butter, which is very sweet. Well, that worked well. Oh, I forgot something. Oh my God. Where's your shirt? You can't make that touffee without some good Liam parents. Sorry about that. And when you buy Worcestershire, it's got to say Liam parents on the jar, on the bottle. Okay? Don't buy anything else. It's just a waste of your time. All right. There you go. That is crawfish etouffee. I mean, yeah, it takes a long time to make the roux, but once you have your mise en place, oh, look, French words, price just went up. Mise en place means in place, roughly translated. You notice I got my green onions chopped, I got my tomatoes diced over here for the next dish, I got crawfish and stuff over here. Get all your stuff together first. As you can see, a lot of these dishes, you have to have split-second timing, particularly this one. Now, if you're going to make a West Louisiana crawfish stew, like the way they make etouffee, it's not as important. But in these fine, delicate sauces, you have to have all your stuff together and be ready to move on time. Just waiting a little bit too long on this dish before you get the roux in or mount it with the butter, and those crawfish are going to turn to dust and they're going to lose all of their flavor. With this dish, if you move too slowly with that shrimp Creole, the shrimp are going to be like rubber bands and all your vegetables are going to lose all their structure. Okay, so make sure you have your mise en place. And that's that. You're on.
So how's everything going on in Zoom land? Everything going well? Anybody want to give us a shout on how you're doing? You want to keeping up? Is it easy to keep up?
Wendy raising the wine glass, so.
They're raising the wine glasses?
You can unmute, hey, Steve, you can unmute them if they got any questions.
If you have any questions,
Yep.
take advantage of the chef here. But again, I need to clarify one thing that at some point, and I'm gonna get dismembered by the Scott County Women's Club, not Women's Club, it's a women's club full of women, but that's okay. So I would consider myself relatively cheap with this, but anyway, so that's one of the fun things that we get to do is just socialize with people and kind of work together for projects. So Steve, do you have anybody that's wanting to ask questions? Anybody raising hands? Speak out.
If you guys have questions, go on mute and ask your question, and everybody can hear you. Patricia, can you unmute?
I did. Hi, since you're dropping names of products to use, what kind of butter and what kind of rice do you use?
You use Uncle Ben's converted rice. Use no other rice. Any other rice, when you cook it, it looks like, I can't say maggots, can I? Uncle Ben's rice keeps its shape, it flakes, it doesn't turn into clumps, and it doesn't look all hairy. You know what I mean? When you cook that other rice and the ends of it explode and it looks kind of weird, Uncle Ben's keeps its shape, even if you overcook it. So that's what we always use. And we immediately shock it when it comes off of the stove with some cold water and make sure all the residual heat is out of it. And then at service, what we do with rice is we simply will put it in a soup cup, stick it in the microwave for 20 seconds, bam, it's on the plate.
Oh.
Now, if you're feeding a big group of people, don't bother with the microwave. Get, well, I used to have a strainer over here. See, I got this big industrial job, you know, and I put several pounds of rice in it, stick it under the hot water faucet, and it heats it up and rinses off the excess starch so it flakes on the plate.
What was the name of the rice? Uncle Ben's, what did you say?
Converted.
Uncle Ben's.
It's the only kind they make.
And it's all on
Okay,
the recipes. The recipes that I sent out to everybody came from Chef Greg and his words and how to prepare and all, so that I do remember saying use Uncle Ben's.
Yeah, specific products. Everybody put your iron skillet on your stove on a medium heat. Let's get it hot for the next dish.
What about butter? Did you say butter,
I
salted or
buy
unsalted?
salted butter, and you know, whichever one costs the least, that's the one I buy. Butter is butter. I mean, you know, it's not going to be that different.
But you use a lot of it.
We do. I buy butter, what is it, 36 pounds to the case. I go through 2 cases a week at Broussard's. Yeah, we go through 6 cases of cream. You know, I mean, yeah, and we go through 40 pounds of sugar a week. You know, I mean, we use a lot of product. I have a truck come, well, 3 different trucks that come twice a week and bringing lots of stuff.
Where do you like to get your vegetables?
I buy from Papania's, and they're a commercial supplier. You probably see their trucks out front of restaurants all the time. This time of year, I go to the farmer's market whenever I can. In Lexington, there's a farmer's market every day. I think except for Thursday. So, you know, before I come to work, I come in around 12, you know, we're there till 9 or 10 at night. And I usually, when I leave my house in Lexington, I'll cruise by the farmer's market and get a few bags of this, a few bags of that. And you'll notice that I don't post specials till 11 o'clock the night before. It's because it's whatever I found in the market that morning is what we're going to have. Okay, so it makes it a whole lot easier for me. That's the best part of my day, really. You know, that and the going home part.
Well, I love how you shop local, and I love the fact that it's the fresh produce that's locally grown, you know,
Yes.
at the farmers markets and such. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Lexington is there's a market just about every day. And there's some really good quality farmers around here. You'll notice my menu at Broussard's changes about every 2 to 3 months. And that's reflecting what I can get that's at the peak quality. Like crawfish in the spring and in the fall, we do a lot of specials with crawfish because they're abundant and they're cheap. You know, so am I. You need to be too. There is no reason that you can't cook top quality foods for not a lot of money.
Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, my question is on the roux, like you make it and then you just let it turn solid at room temperature?
Yeah.
Now do you refrigerate it ever?
Well,
You go through it.
I go through it real fast. We make a 2-pound roux each time, probably 3 times a week.
Okay, cause like if you were like for the home cook, if you were gonna make that roux, if I was having a dinner party and I wanted to do this, could I make my roux like the day before, refrigerate
You
it?
can make it 3 or 4 days before. Yeah, and refrigerate it. And the thing about it is that you can even make make nice little cubes, put them in the freezer, and they're good for months. I mean, I do that sometimes with the peppers, onions, and celery too. They'll be in bags in the freezer. Yeah, you don't want to keep it too long.
You keep the roux back up or down, I say it's.
Well, you didn't.
I don't. I do it in the dish. When I sauteed my crawfish till almost done, then I added the roux to get it to melt, then added the shrimp stock, and it went to work. Now, see, I've still got a bunch of it sitting over here. And Wednesday afternoon, that'll be in somebody's dinner.
And that turns solid just sitting out.
Yeah, it can sit out for a week. 10 days, it might start turning a little green. So we go through it every 2 or 3 days. And sometimes, like on Thursday, we know we're going to be exceptionally busy on the weekends. So we'll make a 4-pound batch. But we still go through it. If there's anything left on Sunday, it just goes in the refrigerator and comes back on Wednesday.
Right.
I mean, it's just butter and flour.
Yeah, because
It can last forever.
Shorten the process of like for a home cook doing the whole.
Yeah, and the recipe calls for a 1/4 pound of butter and about a 1/2 cup of flour or something like that. And it makes a small batch. It'll do crawfish etouffee for probably 8 to 10 people, and that's about it. It'll make about this much. Okay? All right, time to move back over here.
So are we getting the crawfish etouffee yet?
I can't make a big batch of it. It'll be ugly. It'll break and be awful. All right, we're gonna make salmon St. Pierre. Now, St. Peter Street in the French Quarter, which this is named after, is where Pat O'Brien's piano bar is, and everybody drinks hurricanes and staggers down the street. So I named this dish after St. Pierre. You can make this with salmon. You can make it with wahoo. You can make it with any kind of fish you want, but it has to be something with a pretty firm texture. Well, any kind of long line fish like swordfish or grouper or anything like that will work. Normally, when you buy your salmon, it's already cut in pieces. If it's not, you take your trusty knife. And to skin this, I simply come in at about a 35, 40 degree angle, work it in along that skin. And now I've grabbed real tight hold of this skin. Okay, and you'll notice I'm not going to be moving the knife. I'm moving the skin. I'm simply pushing forward with the knife at about a 20 degree slope. And that skin comes off in one piece. And any chef can do that. It looks cool though, doesn't it? Yeah, I usually cut that end piece off, and that's I try to buy a good quality salmon because I'm munching this while I'm cooking. Okay, I'm a big fan of sushi. Now, when I cut this, I'm going for about 6-ounce portions or so. And I do it at a pretty steep angle because I want all that surface area. Okay? If I cut it off square, it'll have to cook a whole lot longer and it just won't be as good. See, we cut at that angle. Look, more sushi. I'm serious, that's what I do with it. All right. Now, for this particular dish that we're doing right here, I'm gonna blacken this salmon. Okay, now you can do this in a regular skillet. You can roast it in the oven, you can stick it under a broiler, you can grill it, you can do whatever you want. But for this particular dish, we're gonna blacken it. I like the crust that it puts on it. When you blacken things, the paprika that's in that spice mix caramelizes on the surface. Some chefs will take this kind of spice mix and mix a little bit of sugar with it for blackening to get more of a crispy caramelized kind of crust. I think that's blasphemy. But a lot of it happens a lot. All right. Now, everybody at home, at this point, go open the window. I'm not kidding you. Turn on the exhaust fan, open the window. Steel spatula.
Open the window?
I don't have to. Steel spatula. I don't have to open the window here because, let me show you something really cool. All right, now you notice there's no oil, there's no water, no nothing. Just a hot iron skillet. Check this out.
Oh, we can't see it.
It's a fan.
It's a privacy shade for the camera.
Yeah, that's it. But that's going to suck most of the smoke out of here. Well, eventually, these people over here, they'll be okay. But now that's cooking. We're going to use the same skillet. That's why I love these non-stick. Just wipe them out.
You just blacken one side of it?
No, we're going to do all of it.
All of it, okay.
Skillet really should have been a little bit hotter, but it's not too bad. All right, now we're going to make St. Pierre sauce. This is an emulsified butter sauce. And by that I mean, we're going to saute our shrimps and a little bit of crawfish. Your recipe calls for crab meat. When the crab I saw at the market today, I just wasn't going to buy it. So I brought a little bit of crawfish. And you can sub it, you can leave the crawfish out. You can put in some chopped up andouille. This is very versatile. What I want you to learn from this is the emulsified butter sauce technique, okay? The specific recipe is a really good one, but I want you to learn this technique because you can do it with anything. You can make pasta sauces with some diced tomatoes with this and a little bit of herbs. All right, I'm gonna let this thing get hot. It's time to open another bottle of wine if you need. Now our fish is cooking. You can see the pinkness starting to climb up the sides. It's cooking. I don't cook this beyond medium, okay? Now, when I pull it off, the residual heat is going to continue to cook a little bit. So I pull it off at a little bit beyond medium rare. If you overcook your fish to well done, you might as well be chewing on my shoe, okay? At medium, with today's farming techniques and processing techniques, you don't have to worry about it hurting you. You can do the same thing with pork, for that matter, with the tenderloins, the better cuts. But like I said, we go to about medium. All right. Now don't play with this. Turn it one time. If you're going to turn it several times, it's going to break apart. Whether it's fish, chicken, whatever it is, you're going to tear it apart. And you're not going to get that caramelization. Okay, now we're going to start on the sauce. When I went to the market this morning, there were some red and yellow tomatoes, so that's what we got. All right, this one is very simple, but it's very fast. You have to have your mise en place ready. You cannot play around on this one. If you do, it'll break, and when it goes on the plate, you can see where the butter and the wine starts to separate, and it looks like it just does. All right. We start with butter. But you never saw that coming, did you? You see, notice I pull it off each time because I don't want to burn it. You know, a brown butter is not going to taste the same as just a simply melted butter. Some garlic. Add some spice. Same technique. We're softening the garlic and turning loose the aromas. When you come into my restaurant, my food has to look good, it has to smell right, and it has to taste right. You have to have all three of those elements. And if you don't follow these proper techniques, you're not going to get everything you're looking for. All right, so put in some shrimp, and you at home, put in your shrimp at this point. Throw in a little bit of chopped just because we like them. And you'll add your crab meat here in a little while. The fish is almost done. All right, at this point, I'm going to put in half of my tomatoes, of the diced tomatoes. The reason being is I want that half to cook down and become a part of the sauce. And they will give up all their sugars and they'll start to break down and they'll look really nice in the sauce. Then we're going to put the rest of the tomatoes in when the wine has reduced. Then you get the crunch from the tomatoes, plus they have a very different flavor than a cooked tomato. So it adds a lot of brightness. Cuts through the heavy butter and the wine sauce. A little smoky in here, ain't it? Just a little.
Great.
All right, and you can see the color on this fish. Now, we got a little bit of blackened action going, but we're primarily, and that's where the paprika is really caramelized, but we haven't burned the herbs that are in here. That's important. Burnt herbs, well, they taste burnt, but they won't have their inherent flavor. All right, shrimps are about halfway done. At this point, we're going to add our wine. Just a little wine. Now, I want this wine to reduce by about half. And the shrimp will continue, will finish cooking during this time. Probably need a little more spice mix. It doesn't look quite dark enough. And give it a little splash of Worcester while you're at it, just because.
Is it a dry wine?
Very, very cheap too. When you're cooking, the rule is usually don't cook with something you wouldn't drink. Sure. Now that's not $3 a gallon, but it's not $15 a bottle either.
Right.
You know, it's about $6 or $7 a bottle. All right, the wine is reduced by about half. Those of you at home, add your crab meat now. Add the remainder of your tomatoes now. And we're just gonna stir. Now we just wanna heat through the crab meat and the tomatoes. Don't stir too much at this point. You'll break apart the lumps of the crab meat. And your presentation won't be as nice. It smells good too, doesn't it? All right, we pull this off the heat, and what do we do next? We add butter. We melt this with butter. This is an emulsified butter sauce. By reducing that wine by half and adding butter at the end, you saw it was pretty much liquid. But look what happens when it gets emulsified by this butter. It gets thicker, it gets smooth and creamy. See the difference? Can you see? Can you get close on this? Instead of a liquid like the wine that was in there before, now it's tightened up and got a little bit thicker. And it's been emulsified by the butter. Put more butter in. And that, folks, is the St. Pierre sauce. Clean it up a little bit. We'll garnish with a little bit of green. That's the St. Pierre sauce. Salmon St. Pierre. And you'll notice how incredibly simple I make this look. But the fact of the matter is these dishes are very simple. They all stem from, you know, all these recipes are a couple of 100 years old. They come from the bayou in Louisiana and the Mississippi Delta area. These are the foods that we from New Orleans eat every day. Okay, we don't get like this by accident. Okay, but these techniques, like the mounting with the butter, you can do that with a mushroom gravy that you made for meatloaf. At the very end, before you serve it, mount it with some butter. It smooths it out, makes it nice and creamy. And a lot of times when you're cooking, you'll have one ingredient or one flavor that tries to take over. Well, that butter smoothes everything out. And it makes it for a nice creamy sauce and adds a little bit of sweetness to it. So I hope you take from this tonight that fine foods like this are not beyond your reach. They're incredibly simple. You learn some very simple techniques here. And I thought I'd throw in one more just because. Can you clean the skillet out for me? Let's see. Now, we're going to make a vegetable dish here that is simply zucchini and yellow squash. That's all it is. Now, for two people, you probably need about that much and that much. That'll be enough. But when you taste this, you will be surprised. Everybody's eating squash. I mean, everybody's eating zucchini. You know what it tastes like. But we're going to use these techniques that we just learned, particularly the emulsified butter sauce, to make this zucchini. I'm slicing it a little bigger than 1/8 of an inch. Thank you. When you're chopping green onions, let me show you an easy way to do this. Take this stuff and kind of twist it a little bit. Hold it tight. When you're chopping vegetables, when you want to cut it small, your fingers are close. When you're cutting big chunks like we did for Creole, your fingers are far away because you're moving pretty fast. With this, we're just slicing this into about 8-inch slices. Nothing major. This is so simple and will make such a big difference in what your foods look like. Okay? Now, we're going to come over here again. And here's a real simple presentation. Open more wine if you have to. It's sand. We're going to make essentially an emulsified butter sauce with this zucchini. Now you can make this for your kids who won't eat zucchini and yellow squash. By God, they'll eat this. I promise you they will. And we're going to cook off all the alcohol. All the alcohol evaporates and it leaves behind its flavor. So you don't have to worry about the kids nodding off, falling off the sofa. Okay. All right, we got her nice and hot. What do we start with? Butter. Butter. Some garlic. And some spice mix. Practically every dish we serve at Broussard starts in this exact manner. Just about every one. Did I mention 60-some pounds a week in butter? All right. We got our zucchinis. Some diced tomato. And here again, we're doing the same technique as before. We're adding half of our tomatoes now so that they will cook down and add their sweetness to the sauce. This is serious wicked stove. Let me tell you what, I need one of these in my house. I'm not kidding you, this thing is cool. We'll add a little green just for color. Now saute these a little bit. They cook some. Then we're coming back to wine. When you're cooking, the type of wines you want to use, you want to stay away from wines that are very tart, have very high tannins. You want to get more towards like big, fat, buttery Chardonnays. Okay, they'll add a lot more flavor. If you have a dish that you're cooking that has, say, like a lot of tomatoes, and you're trying to soften that acid, use some. You know, you can use a different type of wine. You can even use a Moscato if you want. Just sweeten it up. Yeah, I know. And the type of wine doesn't have a whole lot of effect on the end flavor, but it's a real subtle thing that does make a little bit of difference. Notice I use better stuff to cook this. A little bit for the pot. A little bit for me. That's how you do this, okay? And by the time the kids come home from school and they're screaming and they want some supper, you got supper and you got a lot of happy. Now we're cooking this, we're boiling, and we sauteed the zucchini some, which put a little crisp around the outer edge where the skin's still on there. Okay, now we're using this wine as a flavor ingredient, but it's also boiling down the squash. So the squash cooks and turns nice and soft. takes a little while.
What temperature do you have your skillet set on?
High,
High?
as hot as it'll get. That's saute. You know, if I was just braising, I'd go at a lower temperature. When you're sauteing, you saute at full blast. It seems a little daunting at first, and you'll more than likely burn quite a few things. But once you learn how to do it, you will find the difference in the flavors of your food. It'd be just totally different. That's about it. Now what? Mounted with butter.
You got some sous chefs out there.
And look, see how it turns nice and creamy, just like that. What was all watery and then kind of awful. Now we'll add a little bit more tomatoes here at the end, just enough to warm them through. It's warm. Leave most of that liquid behind. And that is just some simple sauteed zucchini and yellow squash. But when you taste this, the difference between any zucchini you ever had before is going to be just tremendous difference. And, you know, you can even serve this on top of pasta if you're a vegetarian. I mean, why you would ever do that to yourself, I don't know. No, my daughter's a vegetarian. It broke my heart the day she told me when she was 16. It's like, well, who am I going to eat dinner with now? Your mother's a vegetarian, you know. I mean, come on, your brother's never home. It's just me. I hope you learned a few things here. Keep lots of butter in the house. Of course, you know that. With this chopped garlic, yes, and lots of white wine. This garlic is straight out of the jar, chopped garlic from Kroger. Okay, you don't have to have the greatest things on earth to make really, really good foods. Thank you for watching. Cool.
Chef, has this been a good experience for you?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, what kind of sous chefs do we have out there in the Zoom land? Hopefully you guys have learned a lot. I know that I have, and we've enjoyed watching you. So thank you very much for this, and I'm looking forward to going to experience more of Broussards than what I've experienced, such as whenever you have that St. Pierre on whatever fish, whatever you happen
A
to
lot
have.
of times on the weekend.
Yep, very good. So
I
thank you.
encourage everybody to come in and spend lots of money.
If there's no questions, we're gonna have the Zoom recorded, and I get the recording from that, and as soon as I get it all together, so then we can go back and look at things as well. So thank you, Steve, Chris, with Zoom. You are outstanding in getting everything zoomed in
So let's get
with
them
Zoom.
seasoning so I can get them still.
All right. Well, thank you all again. Thank you so much.
You fed us through the pandemic. Thank you so much. Stand still for a second, Chef. Thank you. You fed us through the pandemic. Now you're doing it again.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, smile.
Chef, instead of double, do you get skillet with vanilla bowl?
The guys who work for me do. I just walk around in the dining room looking for it. No, actually, the guys who work for me, every one of them came to me with very little experience, some with none, some with several years in pizza joints and stuff like that, and they just had a desire to learn, you know, and over the past 2 years, I've taught them, and they have picked it up well enough to where I don't have to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I mean, my day consists of, when I come in, I basically, I don't know, I put together the specialty. I do I cut all the meat and all the fish, because they're not quite there yet. You know, there's $20 a pound proteins. I don't trust anybody else. But that's pretty much it. I put together the special. I help out with any of the prep here and there when I feel like. But other than that, these kids have taken it to the next level on their own, and they are very good. I'm surprised they learned this much in 2 years. They're every bit as good as any recent culinary graduate. And they've spent 2 years in our kitchen instead of 4 years at culinary. Yes, we can make that. Crawfish butter is, you know how we do the half with tomatoes and then the half later? Well, instead of a lot of white wine, we use a little bit of white wine and some cream. That's crawfish butter. That's crawfish butter, some garlic and spice mix. Butter and garlic, spice mix, throw in the crawfish, half your tomatoes, cook it a little while, throw in some wine, throw in a little bit of cream, reduce it, put it on top. It's on every street corner in Pierre. Even at Jazz Fest, there's a bunch of booths that are selling. Yeah, it's most popular. Really? Oh, yeah. I grew up in Hillsmere Shore. I couldn't remember the name of it. Yeah, right on the 7, right where it meets the southern. If you already remember, you probably saw my cousin's signs there. Really construction.
Yeah.
That's my, and my cousin.
Oh, it's all this.
Are you ready for the next
Well, but crab is so high. There's some of my suppliers I can't even get it. Getting ready to take it off the menu. That's the reason I didn't have crab in it here today, because I couldn't get long crab. Yeah, the Asian swimming crab is coming from Canada. Most of my seafood comes out of the concentrating around. Yeah. Ever been to Gordon's Crab House?
Yeah.
You take one crab.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I got for us. All right, let me fix y'all something to eat. All right, that great big skillet. Thank you, mister. All right, we have crawfish. You open these up, put them in this bowl. Outside up. Luckily for me, it's on the refrigerator. So I just stole it. Alright, rice is what I'll need first. Got to make this. Rice? Yeah, need a bunch of rice. You got one of the rice makers? Alright, cool. We're gonna make this crawfish etouffee. We're gonna serve it up the same way we did the Creole. Some rice, a little bit of etouffee, and then small plates.
The last dish, you're gonna be using big.
Yeah. Container with chopped green onion.
Right here. Right here.
We have some more diced tomatoes. I can use the canned stuff. Huh? Oh, yeah, it is. Dana, I swiped all your garlic out of your refrigerator. I ran out. I'll leave $1 in there for you.
I got a tube.
I got that too.
You got that too?
Yeah, I forgot I had to make for 20 people, and I only brought enough garlic to get through the show.
Okay, everything's good in here. Okay.
We're fine.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, nice one. Just a quarter. Okay. That is chicken base.
Oh, where's the roux? This.
Just chicken base. It's just commercial.
Jay, can I borrow your knife?
In your better grocery store, you can find it like
I don't know.
I don't remember the name of it. Yeah, I think that's might be what it is. Yeah. It's a real high-end grocery restaurant. They have, but you know, you can do.
There's a kind to buy it's this consistency, and it's chicken, and it's
I guess you might do the seasoning to blacken them.
Oh, I'm sure it is. It's honestly better. And I use it for, of course, the chicken flavor. You gotta be careful. It's super salty. Well, yeah, but you're talking about the bowl. This is the shell and part. That's it.
So if I steam, they call it steam.
Well,
Steam the shrimp, and then you set the shells.
well, after it's cooked, it'll still work. But
I got you.
Take a minute and you can
Well, I wish we would have known I was going to make this.
In advance.
It's already 8 o'clock. Put them in that pot, and put them on water, and bring it to a boil. Then we add shrimp shells. Oh, yeah, we did. I give them a gallon bag, about 10 gallons. And let them cook. If you overcook a shellfish or fish stock, it's real bitter.
I'm sure. How about you?
You know what?
I think so.
We're not cooking for a lot of
Steve, this does the same thing. It's designed to sit on a conference room table. I kind of cobbled everything together from some items that I had in my office, but it's got 4 microphones. It's got the ability to. Crestron Murphy has satellite microphones that you can hook to.
Yeah.
So, you can put this on a conference room table, stretch the satellite microphones out, and I mean you can catch 40 feet around it. Which pretty well. I had this at the Tech Council in Nashville, and it was in a room that was probably 60 foot across, and everybody could hear it and be heard. So it's got a pretty good size speaker in it too. So.
Yeah, that would work. You know, when we were dealing with COVID and stuff, we had about a year ago, well, August, we had a board meeting where we tried to bring everybody together. Some people that were uncomfortable with doing it, so they weren't with us, but we, zoomed them in.
We'll shut the recording off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking.
Yeah.